In this lesson, we're looking at Section A.1, which is on 607 in your workbook, and it is dealing with our U.S. measurements. So here's a chart that shows the measurement equivalencies for several things. Notice we have length with our inches and feet and yards and miles, our weight with ounces, pounds, and tons, and the capacity, which is also another name for volume, with our ounces, cups, pints, quarts, and gallons, and then our time with seconds, minutes, hours, days, and weeks. And obviously we can put years on there as well. If we look up our U.S. customary system, there are a few things that are interesting. The first thing is that it is similar to the British imperial system. And then some interesting facts. I thought was interesting that the U.S. is only one of 3 countries to use its own system. So the only other countries that do not use the metric system are Burma and Liberia. I thought that was interesting. And I came across the idea that a peck is the same as 2 gallons, and 1 bushel is equal to 4 pecks. And I thought that was pretty cool, that bushels and pecks were actually measurements because of the song I Love You Bushels and Pecks. My grandmother used to sing it to me. And it also mentions, just so we can see that something we're used to seeing, that 1 bushel is also equal to about 1.224 cubic feet. So it gives us an idea, a reference point. But again, you're not expected to know these, just FYI. When we're looking at our system, we have some true or false here. The units ounces and flu ounces are both used for weight. That is false. Because if we look back on our charts, we have the idea that our ounces have to deal with weight, but fluid ounces have to deal with capacity, which again we know is our volume. And so for the weight, it's 16 ounces equals a pound. For capacity, it's 8 fluid ounces that equal a cup. So there's a difference there for sure. The second one, both 36 inches and 3 feet are equivalent to 1 yard. That is true. And again, it shows us that on our charts. And a pint is smaller than a quart. Well, if we look at the conversions, 1 pint is the same as 2 cups. But if you go to quarts, 1 quart is 2 pints. So since we need 2 pints to equal 1 quart, then a pint is smaller because we need more of them to have the same amount. And a friend of mine one time showed me this picture that it really helped me see and get the idea of those units. So here we have a gallon. And inside of the gallon, there are 4 quarts. And inside of each quart are 2 pints. And then inside of each pint will be 2 cups. And so it really helps me visualize those units of measurement and how they can compare to each other. So we can see in here that 2 cups are the same as 1 pint, 2 pints are the same as 1 gallon, or sorry, quarts, and then it takes 4 quarts to make 1 gallon. So that's a helpful chart to know. When we're converting measurements from ounces to pounds, for example, or pounds to ounces, we need to either use multiplication or division to accomplish this. And so the steps are to determine which pair of equivalent measurements has units that match the units in the original form and the desired form. And so that's looking at the chart. So for example, if we're converting ounces to pounds, you need to find the relationship between ounces and pounds in the chart. And then determine if you're going from a smaller to a larger or a larger to smaller. Again, the one that has 1 will be the larger unit, and the one that has a number other than 1 will be the smaller unit, because again, it takes more of them to make up to the larger unit. And then if you're going from a larger unit to a smaller unit, again, you're going to need more of them, so you're going to multiply. And if you're going from a smaller unit to a larger unit, you're going to divide to get a smaller number, and it's saying always multiply, divide number in the equivalent measurement that's not equal to 1. So for example, if we have 16 ounces or in 1 pound, you would be multiplying or dividing by that 16 depending on which way you're going. We're going to walk us through an example here. We want to convert 3 cups into fluid ounces. And so if we look at the chart, it's 8 fluid ounces that equals 1 cup. And so which one's larger? The one with the 1 would be the larger unit, so it would be the cups. And so for this one, we're going from cups to ounces, so we're going from the larger unit to the smaller unit. And again, when we go larger to smaller, we're going to need more of them, so we need to multiply in order to do that. So we have 3 cups, and we're multiplying it by the 8 ounces in 1 cup. So we have the 8 from our unit multiplier, and that will give us 24 fluid ounces, being the equivalent of our 3 cups. So another way to think of this unit conversion is by looking at unit fractions. This is actually my preferred way of doing things, because then I don't second guess myself on if I'm doing the multiplication or division correctly. Converting values using unit fractions is very common in the sciences. A unit fraction is a fraction that is equivalent or equal to 1. Unit fractions can be made from the equivalent measurements because each part of the equivalent measurement represents the same amount. For instance, 1 foot over 12 inches are the same length, 1 foot equals 12 inches, and 1 minute over 60 seconds is the same again, because we know that 1 minute is the same amount as 60 seconds. So we're dividing something by itself in just a different form, so to speak. So anything divided by itself is 1. That's why they call it a unit fraction. Because since the value of the unit fraction is 1, multiplying an expression by the unit fraction does not change the value of it. And another term for this is called dimensional analysis. It sounds pretty fancy, doesn't it? But the main goal of dimensional analysis is to rewrite the original measurements so that it has a different unit on it. So again, going from feet to inches or minutes to seconds in the 2 examples that they gave us here from our fractions. So when we're going to use a unit fraction, it says determine which unit fraction has the units that match the original. Again, finding that column or row in the chart that gives you that information. And so the unit that you want to keep will go on the top or in the numerator. The unit you need to get rid of will be in the bottom in the denominator. and then you're going to multiply those two fractions together. And for this case, you can see that we're going from feet to inches. So notice that the feet was what we got. Feet is what we need to get rid of. So we have feet on the top from our 12, or from our 2, and they put it over 1, because anything can be written as a fraction if you put it over 1. And we are keeping the inches, so it went on the top of our unit fraction. And you can see both numbers that we have that aren't ones are across the top, so we're going to multiply those together. But for example, if you had 36 inches and you wanted to convert it into feet, again, they give us inches, so you want to get rid of inches, so the inches will go on the bottom, and we want to keep feet, so feet would go on the top. And then you plug in those numbers of the equivalent forms. It's 12 inches and 1 foot. And again, if we wanted to, we could write this 36 as over 1. And when we do that, we can see that we have 36 is in the top times 1, 12 is in the bottom times that 1. So we're there dividing 36 divided by 12 to get 3 feet. So sometimes the two numbers that aren't ones across the top to multiply, and sometimes they're diagonal from each other, one on the top, one on the bottom. And so when you have that, you will divide your 36 in this case, numerator, divided by the one that's in the denominator. And again, in this case, 12. So this helps you know for sure whether you're multiplying or dividing. And so let's look at an example here. Which equivalent measurement has both days and hours? Well, we have 1 day equals 24 hours. And so the question here asks us to convert days into hours. So they're giving us days. So that means we need to multiply by something that has days in the denominator. And we want to keep hours, so we'll put hours on top. And it's 1 day equals 24 hours. So here's our unit fraction. And when we multiply that by our 5, we will get that there's 120 hours in the day. Because again, when we do this, the days will cancel with days, and we're left with our hours. Let's look at another one. They want us to convert tons into ounces. But notice there's not an equivalent measurement that gives ounces in a ton. So this we need to use more than one equivalent measurement to be able to get to our answer. So it says, which measurement has a ton? So according to the chart, we have that 1 ton is equal to 2,000 pounds. And then if we have pounds and we look it up, we can go from pounds to ounces. So 1 pound is equal to 16 ounces. So that's the one that we want to end up with is ounces. And so when we do that, we will use 2 unit conversions. We'll go from tons to pounds and then from pounds to ounces. And so again, in our unit fractions, we have tons. We're going to get rid of tons. And then that conversion was including pounds. And so then when we do that part, our tons will be gone and we're left with pounds. But then we need to get rid of our pounds and keep ounces. So ounces will go on the top and pounds on the bottom. So that way we will cancel out our pounds to pounds and be left with ounces. Now let's fill in those numbers from our equivalent forms. And so it was 1 ton is 2,000 pounds. And 1 pound is 16 ounces. So notice all our ones are across the bottom. So anything divided by 1 stays the same. That means we just multiply our 3 times 2,000 times 16. And so that will give us 96 1,000 ounces in 3 tons. So here's a couple for you to look at. And so go ahead and try those on your own, check your answers, and when you're ready, we'll look at 2 story problems together. Okay, the first one tells us that Barbara's Bombastic Bakery uses 1 pint of milk to make each batch of chocolate chip cupcakes. How many batches can she get from 1 gallon? So you could actually use that handy dandy chart that I showed you way back here to answer that, because we can see how many pints are in our big gallon. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8. So 8 pints would equal 8 batches. But let's demonstrate that information using our unit conversions. And so first thing we need to write down is that we have 1 gallon. And the chart tells us that 1 gallon is 4 quarts. So our first unit conversion will have 1 gallon is 4 quarts. So we're getting rid of gallons and we're gaining quarts. But we're not asked for quarts, we have to get it down into pints. And so we have to go to another column or row on our chart and get rid of quarts. And it tells us that quarts and pints can be compared. And it is 2 pints for every 1 quart. And so there we're getting rid of quarts. And we're given pints now, which is the unit that we want. And so we're done with picking our unit conversions. And again, all the ones are across the top, so we're just multiplying 1 times 4 times 2, which gives us our 8 pints. And again, we know that there's 1 pint per batch, so that's equal to 8 batches. Our final story problem is looking at age. I'm going to use my age as an example, but when you're writing this down, you can plug into your age and figure out the answer for yourself. So I'm giving away that on my next birthday, I will be 42. Not a shame, just 1 more year closer to retirement. And so we know that there's 365 days in 1 year. It tells us to ignore leap years up there. So I have 42 years coming up times 365 days in 1 year, if we want to write it as our unit fraction, and my years would be here. Cancel. So that would give me 15,330 days old. Whew, makes me sound ancient. But for part C, they want us to figure out how many seconds that is going to be. So we're going to have to use several multiplications for our unit conversions. So we're going to start with our 15,330. And that's days. Well, I don't know how many seconds in a day, but I do know that there are 24 hours in a day. So now I'm getting rid of my days. And I want to get rid of hours, and I know that there's 60 minutes in an hour. There we go. And so I got rid of my hours now, but I have minutes and not seconds, so I know that there's 60 seconds in 1 minute. So now I finally got to where I'm going from days into seconds. So we can see we're going to multiply 15,330 times 24 times 60 times 60 again. And so on my next birthday, I will be 1,324,512,000 seconds old on my 42nd birthday. Now that really does make me sound old. If you have any questions or problems doing this homework, please don't hesitate to send me an email. Don't forget to screenshot the question so I can see it as well. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.